Hey, you can get some cool and fun rewards for helping me help kids. Stick around after the video for more information. Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about The Boys Season 2 on Amazon Prime? Stick around and find out. Bum 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 bum. Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of The Boys Season 2 on Amazon Prime. There wasn't a synopsis on IMDb for the season as a whole, so I kind of stitched together a few things from one or two episodes and added some stuff of my own to come up with Butcher and the boys are now fugitives. Homelander and his parent company Vought are more powerful than ever, and while Homelander attempts to connect with his newly discovered son, a mysterious new female superhero named Stormfront joins the Seven, shaking Homelander and the other team members off balance. Tensions build as the boys continue their fight to take down corrupt superheroes, and the stakes are more personal than ever for everyone. All right, so if you watched the first season, which you should before even listening to my review, the tone, the basic animal that this thing is pretty much the same as the first season. In fact, for my tastes, to a fault. It's superpowered drama with spikes of shocking, superpowered violence and some action peppered throughout, but largely I would describe it as a drama set in a superpowered setting. The tone is much more of the same. There are very few virtuous characters and none that are given central focus. Now, that's not to say that none of them have any good qualities, but there aren't characters that I think are written to make you feel for them and what they're going through. I mean, when we have a protagonist that cares about, prioritizes virtuous things, and then they are downtrodden and going through difficult things in the story, then we want them to succeed, we want them to win, because there's our sense of justice in us says a person that is good like that should not be going through the crap that they are going through. And so we root for them to succeed, and we experience catharsis when they do. But the virtues of the protagonists in this story, I don't think were presented strongly enough or clearly enough or often enough for me to really find myself rooting for anybody. I was just watching different shades of broken humanity and depravity interact with each other for the 8-episode run of this season. The final episode finally gave me characters and a cause I cared about, and that required really some characters that had been on the periphery to come closer to the center and for their motives, their desires in life to come to the center of the action, for me to say, oh, yes, I want them to succeed. I want them to have what they want in life. But most of the time, the character that really triggered that feeling for me in the last episode was a peripheral character and not one of the main characters that we're following in the story. And the rest of the season was just too much of the same in terms of the tone. There was a line from the character Maeve, who's kind of like the Wonder Woman knockoff stand-in in this show, who, in one of the later episodes, says to another character, "It doesn't matter what we do, nothing ever changes or gets better." And that really summarizes a lot of how I felt about this season. They're just doing stuff, characters are doing stuff, we still have a mess of humanity in all of these characters just knocking up against each other, but nothing ever really changes or gets better. I wanted a status quo change, I wanted a real shakeup, and I thought we were going to get that because of how the character Stormfront enters the story early on and really seems to be throwing everybody off balance. But in the end, where they go with her character does not result in a big status quo change for the Seven and public perception. There was a moment that was teased about midway through this season where I thought, oh my gosh, now public perception of the Seven is going to totally change. There's going to be a big revelation of their true character and nature, but it was a teased moment that was actually only happening in the mind of the character that was being focused on. It was just kind of a cheat, where you're like, oh, they were just imagining doing that. And then we see what really happened. I'm like, oh, dang it. And it felt like such a letdown, because in that moment I sat up and I was like, oh, dude, it is about to get real. And then it was the exact opposite of being real. So I was really disappointed that the season didn't pan out the way I thought it had the potential to at a couple significant points in the first half. I want to see this world change. I want to see the places and the perception, the public perception of these characters to be altered significantly so that we can have a new status quo at the beginning of a new season. With serialized television being what it is, they could certainly do that. Maybe they're afraid of shaking up the overall formula too much. I don't know. Maybe they feel like the tension that they're setting up in this world's status quo is enough to help us ride through to the end of the entire series, but I don't think it's going to be enough for me. Also, I'm increasingly seeing the predictably liberal agenda of the writing. This is not a surprise. That's in most entertainment writing and most fiction writing. It's going to skew on the liberal side of things. Villains here are stereotypes of an extreme right-wing worldview. They hate immigration. They're racist. They mock social justice warriors, as they're called by some. I'm not, as someone that is not political at all, but certainly leans toward the conservative side of things, I look at this and it's not that I'm offended. I'm just bored. I'm just like, ho-hum. I've seen this in writing for, well over a decade or two as just a fan of imaginative fiction. So the character Starlight's arc, though, is interesting and unintentionally, I suspect, exposes the natural worldview consequences of drifting away from belief in God toward a more nihilistic tendency. When you set aside belief in God, you logically have no grounds for objective moral virtues. You can still be a moral and virtuous person, but you don't have objective grounds for saying that there are such a thing as real objective moral realities. And so any sense of meaning in life, any sense of virtues in life suddenly lose their substance, and you're left with a jaded perspective on the world. You just see the world as pointless. And again, I'm not saying that naturalists feel this way. There are many naturalists that do not have this view, but they're not being logically consistent in the given the ramifications of their worldview position. And I think as Christians, we can totally be believers in the existence of God, and yet when we don't apply the reality of his existence and the ramifications of that, we can find ourselves drifting into a more nihilistic kind of worldview, So, but Starlight in much of this season is jaded, compromised, hypocritical, superficial, and lacking hope in her perspective on life. Nihilism really seems to be the worldview tendency behind the writing, either in the writing for this show or maybe Garth Ennis's original comic book work that this is based on. I don't know which, but that would be my guess. I can't read any minds, but my guess is that there's a tendency toward, if not an actual adoption of, nihilistic philosophy that has inspired a lot of the thinking behind the writing of this show. But it's not 100% consistent, as there is a brief note of hope in Starlight's outlook by the end. Very brief, though. Another major inconsistency is the show's stance on the objectification of women. It was dealt with a little bit more in the first season, but also in the second season, we're seeing moments in this season, for example, that exemplify the heartless and sexist agendas that are, I think, undoubtedly present in the promotion of lesbian relationships in entertainment. The PR people are just really ticking demographic boxes because they know that that's going to sell, that they know that that kind of movement and having representation in that way is going to sell with certain members of the demographic, but that's the only reason that they're doing that, So don't get me wrong, I'm not someone that would be in agreement that we should promote those kinds of relationships and say that they're things that should be pursued, but at the same time, what I think is going on in a lot of entertainment that I think this script is trying to point a finger at is even those who are supporting those movements, many of them in the entertainment industry are just doing it to check demographic boxes. They are cold and heartless in their promotion of those things. It's just about getting approval ratings up and more clicks and views and stuff. And the creepy Homelander character also supporting this trend among the seven and the PR that they're doing. Clearly enjoys seeing women kissing each other for very selfish and objectifying reasons of his own. And yet, near the end of the season, two characters are watching superhero porn, which is also briefly displayed with female nudity to us as audience members. Now, having two characters watch porn in a show or a movie, you can portray that kind of plot beat without actually showing us as an audience member actresses who are exposing themselves to millions of viewers. And so that moment could have worked without actually asking an actress to expose herself in that way. And so I think that either to satisfy the base desires of male viewers or out of a bewildering lack of self-awareness, the producers of The Boys have actually made themselves guilty of the very objectification they are preaching against in this series. The story has a few funny moments that made me chuckle. There are some shocking turns. I always appreciate that. Overall, I think the filmmaking is solid quality stuff. As with the first season, the final episode was the strongest and leaves me feeling interested in watching season 3. However, I stop myself in that thinking as I go back to my thoughts on the rest of the season. I'm like, well, if that's the pattern, like I'm really going to enjoy and start caring about characters in the last episode, and really that's about it, do I really want to sit through a season 3 that's likely to follow that same pattern, you know? So I think that unless I see promotional material for the third season, whenever that might come, I think COVID will probably result in some significant delays. But whenever I do see promotional material for that season, unless I see something indicating that there's going to be character arcs, character stories prominently that will lead me to actually care about some people in season 3 on a regular basis, then I really doubt I'm going to be interested enough to push through more of the same prevailing nihilistic tone and unwillingness to truly shake up the status quo in this show. As far as cast and performances go, I thought they were all solid, much as I felt about the first season, really moving in particular from a couple performers in the final episode, so I have no real complaints as far as the performances go. As far as the stunts and visuals, it's all on par with season 1, you know, really good. We're seeing some really neat stuff happen in that regard in these premium subscription service shows, so I don't really have any complaints about the visual effects either. I've already commented as far as moral philosophical themes and stuff. Usually I would talk about that here, but I've already commented on those themes since they're so bound to the story and the tone, so I don't really have anything more to say on that. But since I have no idea what your tastes are in TV shows, I'll think to myself, if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time regarding this one and say, Peter, you know, don't review this one. You got other content that you can make for this week or lean on for this week. Maybe watch it at your own pace someday as like a bucket list type of thing, but you're not missing much if you skip it. And this season is ultimately going to convince you that it may be time for you to part ways with this show. It's rated TVMA, and every episode is rated for different reasons, but broad strokes, gory violence, language, sexual content, and in the last or second to last episode, some brief nudity. All right, those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that notification bell, anything you want to do to stay connected and share this content with other people. I'd really appreciate it. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for all their support. You can get more information about the benefits of becoming an insider at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. And then, as always, I hope you join us soon over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For my 7th consecutive year, I'm participating in Extra Life, a charity event that raises funds to provide medical care for children in urgent need. I'm also leading the Christian Geek Central Extra Life team, which you're still welcome to join by following the link in the description below. Once again this year, I'm drawing attention to our team's fundraising by performing a 24-hour marathon of video gaming that I will stream live on youtube.com/ChristianGeekCentral and ChristianGeekCentral.com beginning 5 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday, November 7th. You can donate on my page or any team member's page by following the links below, where you will also find incentives and rewards for doing so. On my page, for example, for a donation of $5, you can choose a topic to add to my +3 page of many topics that I'll be blabbing my opinions on during the live stream. For $10, you get the previous reward and a download code for a free copy of the Spirit Blade Special Edition audio drama. For $20, you get the previous rewards and you can choose a game for me to play during my November 7th live stream. Pick a favorite or torture me with something terrible or rage-inducingly difficult. For $30, you get the previous rewards, and you can choose a song for me to sing during my November 7th live stream. Pick an old favorite of yours or just make me humiliate and torture myself with something nobody wants to hear. And for $50 or more, you get the previous rewards and a download code for every MP3 product at spiritblade.com. That's an $80 value. On top of that, I have set fundraising milestones that will unlock strange and unusual happenings as I reach them. At $200, I'll have a free download day for everyone who visits spiritblade.com on November 11th. And as my total goes beyond $200, I'll unlock increasingly more content for the free download day. And depending how far beyond $200 my fundraising goes, during my November 7th live stream, I will show embarrassing clips of a movie I made in college with fellow Spirit Blade actor Michael Tully, put on a pair of Frozen socks and a Frozen t-shirt at the same time, shoot water up my nose with a turkey baster, and have my wife Holly play a video game with me for 30 minutes. And if I reach a personal fundraising total of $500 or more, I will face my greatest and most hated enemy in video gaming. I will finally beat Super Mario Bros. Without using cheat codes by the end of 2020, publishing video of my efforts and eventual success, and also make my first attempts during my Extra Life marathon. I freaking hate that game, but I will do this for those kids and their families and for you sadistic people who donate money to make it happen. Now, there are some stipulations and time limits on those rewards and milestones, so quickly follow the link below to my fundraising page for all the details. I hope you will be a part of helping me and the Christian Geek Central team do some good for some kids and families who really need it, and then I hope you'll join me at youtube.com/christiangeekcentral for my 24-hour video gaming marathon starting 5 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday, November 7th. Hope to see you then.